Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to get into a question that we used to ask ourselves this as wedding photographers all the time, and the answer wasn't as clear in my opinion, which is, if I had to shoot a wedding with one lens, what would that lens be? And back in the day, I would probably say the 24-70, because back in the day, the options were 24-70, 70-200. Those were the ones that you would be shooting 90% of the wedding with if you weren't a prime shooter. So at that point, I would go the 24-70 would make more sense because it gives you that wide range. So if I have to do families, if I have to do wedding party, if I have to do dance photos, it would cover all those things. You just wouldn't get that telephoto look that the 70-200 would give you. It was a very big trade-off. Now, a couple of years ago, Tamron came along and changed the game, I would say. I've posted a couple of videos about it, but I feel like I wanted to do an update after shooting, I would say, at least 500,000 photos with this lens. Like, it has been a very busy few years. And just like the title says, if there was one lens that I would choose to shoot a wedding, it would be this guy right here. The 35-150 is just, you guys have heard me talk about it. I'm sure you've watched reviews about it. But if there was one lens that I could confidently say that if one of my second photographers or even lead photographers, for example, would show up with and shoot an entire day with, it would be this. Now, we also use the 14-24 from Sigma for the super wide angle shots like the ones that you're seeing right now. The super wide angle shots that we do are pretty much like very indicative of our style. It kind of shows our brand. A lot of couples who reach out to us, those are the photos that they like, is those super wide, theatrical looking, cinematic looking shots that we use off-camera lighting with. There's an art to that, to shooting with a super wide angle, which we've posted a couple of videos about them. I'll link them below, but I'm also gonna do an updated one on that as well. I feel like the YouTube skills have gotten a little bit better since then, so I'm gonna post a video on that. However, going back to the original point, the 35-150, the reason that I freaking love this lens for wedding days is because if I show up to start doing details, if I show up to start doing final getting ready photos with the bride, if my second photographer shows up to do getting ready photos with the groom and his details, for 99% of the photos that we're gonna take during that portion, this lens is gonna be what we need. So for those detail shots where you're shooting them from above and you're getting everything together, this lens will do it. If you're doing the close-ups, you know, because that's one thing that we always say when we're shooting details is, or anything in general, is wide, medium, tight. So we do a wider shot, we do a medium shot, we do a tight shot. That way we're covering all the bases. So with those details, we're getting the wide at 35-ish, then we're zooming in a little bit to get more of a medium, and then we can go full 150 and just step back so it can focus, because the focusing distance is a little further away when you zoom in, and then you can get those close-up details. If you want to do more of a macro situation, this isn't going to do it exactly. It's not, the focusing distance is not that close, but it's good enough. It does a pretty decent job, as you're seeing right now. The 70-180 that is also from Tamron that they sent us over, that one is amazing because the focusing distance is much closer than this one. But for an overall, if you want just one lens to shoot a wedding, 35-150 is gonna do its job. When we're shooting the ceremony, walking down the aisle, the 35-150 is gonna be amazing because you can zoom all the way in and compress everything and get rid of the cell phones that people put out. Because sometimes people put the cell phones out and you're like, if I'm only at 70, I can't crop all that. With this, I'll go vertical or I'll go horizontal and I'll zoom in. And then when I zoom in, I'm getting rid of all the nonsense around them, you know, if they didn't pay attention to put their cell phones away. And then as they're getting closer and they're doing the handoff, the dad may be doing the handoff, you know, if she's fortunate enough to have her dad walking her down the aisle, and then they'll do the handoff, you can zoom out to 35 and get everything and get the whole scope of that. And then, you know, shooting the ceremony, you can do your wides, you can do your close-ups. It's just, it becomes very versatile. Then when it comes to bride and groom portraits, the fact that the 35-150 opens up to f2 is really nice, because sometimes I'll do walking shots at f2 and walking with them. So on the A9, I have my autofocus on tracking, flexible, spot, S. So very small focusing point that continuously follows them. And the reason for that is if I'm at f2 and they step forward or backwards, I need my autofocus to continually focus on them so it doesn't miss focus. And on that note, I mean, this thing rarely misses focus. And that is a contributing factor of the A9 as well as the 35-150. Paired together, they do a really, really great job. I rarely miss focus on shots. So if I'm walking with them and I want that nice shallow depth of field at 35, I will go to f2 and then I'll walk with them and get that really nice dreamy look around them. Generally speaking, here's a little tip for you guys. Put it to 2.8 and leave it at 2.8. Why am I saying that? Because if you forget to change it to 2.8 at 35, now as you zoom in, it's gonna get a little bit darker. It's gonna close down. As you zoom out, it's gonna get brighter. It's gonna open up, and it might throw off your exposure significantly. If you put it at 2.8 at 35 and half press your shutter so it kind of like locks it in, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, it's gonna stay at 2.8. And that way you don't have to worry about the exposure changing. Understand time and place to use a wider aperture. So for me, like when I'm doing those walking shots, I'll open it to 2.0 and then I'll remember to close it back down just so I don't have that fluctuation when I'm shooting. So it's a little tip that's helped me so that way it doesn't throw off my focus or it doesn't throw off my exposure throughout the day. Now back to, let's say we're working in chronological order. So we did the ceremony, we did the getting ready, well, let's do chronological. So we did the getting ready, we did the ceremony, we did some bride and groom photos. Families, you can shoot 95% of families with this. It's extremely rare that I have to switch over to my 14 to 24 and then zoom in. Remember, you don't want to shoot things at 14 and up close. So if I have to do a super wide where I need just a little more stretch, I will probably do the 14 to 24, zoom in as much as I can so it's like at 24, and then take a portrait that way. I don't want to be shooting families at 14. You're going to be stretching people out, especially if you're very close to them. If you're a little further away, you can get away with it, like the portraits that you're seeing right now of our couples. As long as you're about 10, 15 feet away from the couple and put their heads, closer to the center, don't put them near the corner, you're gonna be okay. There's a whole wide angle thing, I'll explain that later. I'll explain it in another video actually. And then the last thing, dancing photos. I guess that would be the last thing, dancing and night photos, because we do some night photos at the end. Dancing photos, you can probably get away with a 35 to 150. You can do a great job with a 35 to 150. Just for weight, if I'm being honest, I will either switch to the 20 to 40 that I have also, or the 14 to 24. The 20 to 40 is great, and that's also a Tamron lens because it's a lot lighter. The 14 to 24 is a little bit heavier. Is it heavy? No, it's just, it weighs a little bit more, so your wrist is gonna feel a little bit more strain. The 35 to 150 is good, but for dancing, that's probably the only area where I probably say I take it off a little bit more because I don't want to, carry extra weight for no reason. And 35, it is a little tight for the dance floor. It's not the most ideal. So I would say that's the only time where I'd probably switch over to something else. However, parent dances, speeches, night photos when we do those zoomed in ones, things like that, like this lens will be perfect for all of that. And then, like I said, dance floor is probably the only area where I will switch lenses. But beyond that, I mean, this thing, I guess it's been about 2 years, maybe about 2 years, something like that. And I can't imagine, if I'm being honest, guys, like going back to a 24 to 70, 70 to 180 situation. Now, I did post a video about the 28 to 75 and 70 to 180 pairing if you do hybrid shooting. So if you shoot photo and video, that to me makes a little bit more sense because you have two lenses for the same price as a 35 to 150 and you have that versatility so you can have two cameras if you need to shoot during the ceremony, for example. And the 28 to 70 is, or 28 to 75 rather, is a lot lighter than the 35 to 150. So if you're carrying it on a gimbal, if you're hand holding it, whatever the case may be, as a videographer, clearly I don't do video, but you can see it's gonna be a lot lighter. It's gonna be a lot easier to carry around. But for photography, I can't see myself, if anybody is a Canon shooter, well, actually Canon doesn't do it yet because they like to play games. So if you're a Sony shooter, if you're a Nikon shooter now, because they just added the Nikon mount to the 35 to 150, honestly, there's no other lens that I can recommend to you that will get everything done. If you're starting out with photography, I understand $2,000, just about $18.99 I think is the price. I understand that's a lot of money. I understand that that's not cheap, but also understand that you're gonna be shooting with these things for a very long time. So think about how much you can make in 6 months. Think about how much money you can make in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, however long you use it. Understand that this is an investment that's gonna get you paid if you're a working photographer, and it's gonna make your life a lot easier. So that's my take on it, guys. Again, Tamron doesn't pay me to say any of this nonsense. Like, I can still talk if there was something that I didn't like about it. For example, like I said, being at f2 and then remembering to close it down. I probably would have been happier, and I said this in the original video, if it was just a 2.8 constant. Not happier, I'm not gonna say that, but I wouldn't have been upset that if they did just at 35 to 150, 2.8. I would have been happy with that. The fact that they added the 2, it's just something that you have to think about while you're shooting, but it's not a negative per se. It's just something that you have to think about. But again, Tamron doesn't pay me to say anything. They don't tell me to say anything. They literally send me a lens and then they go, just give us an honest review. So, that's my disclaimer as far as working with Tamron. Other than that, guys, let me know what you think. Let me know what your opinion is. Have you played with this? Have you gotten it? I know with us on the team, pretty much every single person on our team has it. So I can see how much easier it makes our lives. But let me know what you guys think. Your opinion, it matters. I always like to listen to what you guys have to say. I can honestly say I've learned a lot from people leaving comments. There's a lot of things that were left there, videos that I'm gonna make because of the comments that were left. So if you enjoyed our content and you made it to the end, if you would like to subscribe, I would really appreciate it because we plan on making a lot of videos in the near future. Again, thank you guys so much for watching and I hope you're having a great day.